broke out of the world's toughest prisons. Now he's letting himself in. Jonah Pierce, the escape artist no cage could hold, has landed in Stonewall Penitentiary, not by force, but by design. Because someone left him a blueprint and a message. Break him out. The cell door slammed shut with a hollow echo, sealing Jonah Pierce in a cage he had studied more times than he could count. Gray concrete walls, reinforced steel bars, a ceiling-mounted surveillance camera, standard design, but subtly upgraded. The bolts in the frame have been welded rather than screwed. The corner light buzzed faintly with a dying bulb, but the emergency generator was wired into a pressure sensor system. Standard overkill for Stonewall Penitentiary, one of the most secure facilities in the country. Jonah cataloged it all in seconds. He didn't panic, he didn't curse or shout. He simply sat on the narrow cot, elbows resting on his knees, and watched the guards, watched the doors, watched the movement of inmates being herded across the yard like cattle. His eyes flicked to the floor, standard issue linoleum tiles, but slightly raised by the plumbing beneath them, a potential crawl space. Someone knew where to look. He wasn't here by accident. Jonah had built his reputation in silence and shadows. An escape engineer, he was a man who could find the crack in any wall, the flaw in any system. Cartels, syndicates, revolutionaries, they'd all pay handsomely for his skills. But now, he was on the inside. A court-appointed defense hadn't stood a chance. Cameras proved his involvement in a multi-million-dollar bank heist. He had taken the stand, said nothing, and accepted the sentence like a man headed for vacation, because he wanted in. What he didn't expect was Eric Monroe. Eric sat on the opposite cot, lanky and forgettable, late 30s, maybe early 40s, thinning hair. He read the same worn paperback every night, said nothing during head counts, and always kept his eyes down. A paper ghost, too clean for this place. Jonah had seen guys like him before, low-level embezzlers, or someone who got caught selling fake stocks. But something didn't add up. That night, as the dinner tray slid through the slot, Jonah lifted his and froze. A small, folded slip of paper sat between the bread and the beans. Job offer inside. Break him out. No name, no signature, just that, along with a rough sketch of the prison's foundation. The maintenance corridors below B-Lock, ventilation shafts snaking around the east wall, and the outdated pressure points of the old boiler room. Details only an insider would know. Jonah stared at the note for a long moment. Someone had been watching him. Not just his routine, but his mind. And this wasn't a random offer. It was a test. He glanced up, the overhead camera blinked, its lens twitching slightly. But he knew the angle. He shifted back on his cot, into the blind spot, behind the shelf bolted to the wall. There in silence, he studied the schematics under the flickering light. His cellmate turned the page in his book without looking up. Jonah narrowed his eyes. "Who the hell are you, Eric?" But Eric said nothing. Not yet. By the second week, Jonah had already mapped half the prison in his mind. Every flicker of fluorescent light, every groan in the pipes above the cell block, every clank of a closing gate. It all fed into the mental blueprint he was building. He watched with patience, as a chess master. Guards rotated on 12-minute cycles. Cell block C's floodlights dimmed every night at precisely 2:03 due to a system reset, and the corridor sensors along the east wing flickered off for 60 seconds every third Tuesday for routine diagnostics. Jonah didn't just observe, he cataloged, and he tested. He arranged a coughing fit in the infirmary just to see which guard would leave his post. He dropped a tray in the mess hall to gauge how long it would take the guards to respond to a potential fight. And when one of the janitors left his cart unattended, Jonah swiped 2 cloth rags and a thin metal scraper, harmless items to anyone else, but to Jonah, there were possibilities. Back in the cell, he etched faint marks behind the shelf, carving the maze of corridors and tunnels with the precision of a surgeon. It was invisible unless you knew what to look for, and Jonah knew exactly what he was looking for. The real breakthrough came when he studied the old structural documents a guard had accidentally left in the laundry room. One line caught his eye: Tunnel B3, decommissioned, sealed in 1981, no surface access. But Jonah had seen the grating beneath the showers in cell block C, the rusted bolts, the unusual condensation pattern. That wasn't just drainage, it was air, flowing air, a sealed tunnel that still breathed. Still, a plan needed more than architecture. It needed people. Jonah began planting seeds. He encouraged a volatile inmate named Reyes to pick a fight with the guards during yard time, whispered just enough paranoia to get the kitchen runner to stall dinner service. Chaos, controlled and contained. But the one variable he couldn't predict was his cellmate, Eric Monroe. Each night, Jonah studied him like another map. The man kept his head down, avoided eye contact, and never reacted to the growing tension around them. One evening, Jonah finally spoke. "So, Eric, what's a quiet man like you doing in a place like this?" Eric didn't look up from his book. "Wrong place, wrong time. Come on, someone slipped me a prison schematic. It told me to bust you out. You expect me to believe that you're just some nobody?" Eric hesitated. "I don't know anything." Jonah didn't believe him. His instincts never failed. Eric was hiding something big. Later that night, as Jonah reviewed his etchings under the weak light, he felt a chill. There was a shaft, barely wide enough for a person, behind the laundry chute. It wasn't in any schematics, new or old. There was no reason for it to be there, except for one. Someone wanted it to be found. Jonah leaned back against the wall, the corners of his mouth twitching. This wasn't just an escape. It was a test. Someone was watching to see if he'd pass. The prison roared with chaos. Smoke drifted from the mess hall, where Jonah's carefully orchestrated riot had erupted exactly on schedule. Inmates brawled, fires burned in trash bins, and guards scrambled to contain the violence. Sirens howled, red lights pulsed across the corridors, like veins lit with panic. But Jonah and Eric were already gone. They moved like shadows down the maintenance wing, Jonah leading, Eric following 2 paces behind. Every turn, every door, every blind spot had been chosen with surgical precision. Jonah's heart pounded, not with fear, but focus. The plan was holding. They reached the first checkpoint, security stop station 12. A single guard inside. Jonah had anticipated this. As they crouched behind the utility box, Jonah retrieved a tiny hand-wired device from his belt. He had scavenged the components over weeks, an old paper battery, bits of wire stripped from the light fixture, and a cracked circuit chip in the library computer. When activated, it sent a pulse in the security grid. The lights above flickered. The cameras froze. The guard's radio crackled. "Command to substation 12. Power fluctuation in sector C. Sit tight. We're looking into it." Jonah nodded once. Now. They moved fast, silent. Within seconds, they were past the checkpoint and into the access hall behind cell block C. The air was thick with mold and rot. The tunnel entrance was hidden beneath a floor grate behind the showers, just as Jonah had mapped. He lifted the cover, revealing a narrow crawl space of crumbling concrete and exposed piping. Eric hesitated. This doesn't look stable." "It's not," Jonah replied, "but I reinforced the bad sections last week. We move fast and we don't stop." They dropped in, one after the other. The tunnel groaned with age and disuse. Chunks of bricks fell from the ceiling with every step. Jonah's makeshift braces, broom handles, steel scraps, and knotted cloth held the walls just long enough for them to pass. Minutes felt like hours. At last, they reached a sealed door embedded in rusted steel, a biometric scanner glowing beside it. High-tech, cold, impassable. Jonah pulled a silicone replica from his pack, a mold he had taken from the lieutenant's coffee cup, and shaped over a week in secret, using soap, heat, and pressure. He pressed it into the scanner. A pause. Then beep. Green light. The lock clicked open. Jonah exhaled, relief washing through him. He turned to Eric, a crooked smile forming. "Told you. Flawless." But before they could step through, the tunnel flashed red. The silent alarm, one Jonah hadn't found in any schematic, lit the corridor. Sirens wailed from above. Doors slammed shut behind them. Jonah's breath caught. No. This wasn't part of... Guard shouted in the distance. Footsteps thundered. And then Eric turned to him. Calm. Certain. Almost amused. "Don't worry, Jonah," he said, stepping forward. "You passed the test." Jonah blinked. "What the hell are you talking about?" Eric placed a hand on Jonah's shoulder, and then the reinforced exit door opened from the other side. Not by Jonah's hand, but by someone waiting for them. Jonah expected cuffs, darkness, a boot to the back of the head, maybe a return trip to solitary confinement, where no one ever asked questions or remembered names. Instead, he was led through a corridor he hadn't known existed. The guards flanking him wore no badges, no names. They didn't speak. The path curved downward, below the cell blocks, below the boiler rooms. Every step echoed on polished steel beneath his boots. The air changed, cooler, cleaner. When they finally stopped, the reinforced door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a space that didn't belong in no prison. It looked like a lab fused with a military command center. Glass walls, biometric scanners, hollow screens flickering with maps and intel feeds. Monitors lined the far wall, surveillance footage from all over the world. Not just the prison. Men and women in black tactical suits moved with precision. No wasted movement. This was not the Department of Corrections. Jonah's eyes narrowed. From the shadows, a man emerged. Tall, late 50s, black suit, gray tie, posture like a loaded weapon. "Jonah Pierce," he said, voice calm and clipped. "You just proved why we need you." Jonah's fist clenched. "What the hell is this place?" Before the man could speak, another figure stepped forward. Eric Monroe. Except this wasn't the shy, stuttering cellmate Jonah had spent weeks trying to understand. This Eric was confident, sharp-eyed, wearing a dark tactical uniform instead of prison fatigues. "I was never an inmate," Eric said, "and you were never there to break me out. You were breaking yourself in." Jonah blinked. Eric stepped closer. "With the IPF, the Phantom Force, an elite task unit answering directly to the president. We handle missions no one else can touch. Black sites, ghost operatives, covert extractions. We needed a man who could think in blueprints and blind spots. Someone who could break through any wall, outsmart any system." Jonah's jaw tightened. "So everything, the guards, the riot, the scanner, it was all..." Eric nodded. "Designed to test you. The flaws in the prison, planted. The consistencies in security, deliberate. We built the maze and waited to see if you'd solve it." Jonah's mind raced, the clues he thought he'd uncovered, the triumphs he'd earned. Every step had been manipulated, but the outcome, that had been his. The man in the suit stepped forward again. "You impressed us. You have a talent few do. And now we're offering you something better than freedom. A seat at the table. You'd operate globally, answer to no flag, no agency, just the mission." Jonah crossed his arms. "And if I say no?" The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then we put you right back where we found you, cell 42B. Only this time no exit, no blind spots, no tests. Just a cage." Jonah looked at Eric, looked at the sleek walls around him, the screens, the endless corridors of secrets. He wasn't just being offered a job, he was being offered a war to fight. And he was starting to think he'd already picked a side. Jonah stood at the threshold of a new world. No bars, no guards, no chains. Just silence and a choice. He'd been escorted into a new chamber, far below the prison surface, unlike the sterile command room from earlier. This one felt older, more sacred. A vault of secrets lined with black glass screens and long steel tables scattered with physical folders, each one marked classified in bold red. Eric was already inside, his demeanor more formal now, hands behind his back, jaw tight, like a soldier at parade rest. "Take a look," he said simply, nodding toward the files. Jonah hesitated, then stepped forward. The first file was labeled Operation Ash Window, an extraction mission in Damascus involving a U.S. diplomat marked for assassination. The second, Protocol Emberglass, was an undercover prison swap gone wrong, where an embedded asset was rescued from a cartel bunker using only a single narrow ventilation shaft and a timing sequence designed to the second. He flipped through page after page, schematics, tactics, field reports, and in every mission, one thing stood out. They weren't about brute force or flashy tech. They were about strategy, mental warfare, escape under pressure. "This is what we do," said the man in the suit, now seated calmly at the table's far end. "Every mission is a dead end. Every target is locked behind layers of barriers, political, physical, digital. We find ways through them all." Jonah ran his hand over a file marked Blackwall, a a failed operation that cost 4 agents their lives. He studied the mistake, a misjudged fallback point, a trapdoor left unsecured. He could have avoided that. He'd be designing the plans, the man continued. Infiltrations, extractions, disappearances. We don't send in armies, we send in ghosts, and you'd be the one making sure they come out alive. Jonah exhaled slowly. For years he lived as an outlaw, hunted, hidden, hired by criminals who barely understood his talent. His gift had always been a burden, a way to survive. But now it could be something more. He looked up, meeting the eyes of the man in the suit. And if I say yes, then your records disappear, your past becomes a myth, and you go to work for people who understand what you're capable of. Jonah turned to Eric. So this whole thing, getting caught, the escape, it was your idea. Eric's lips curled into a faint smile. It was your audition. Jonah looked around the room one more time, the weight of secrets of possibility pressed in from all sides. He could walk away, let the world forget him, or he could step forward and become something else entirely. He nodded once. When do I begin? The man in the suit stood. Welcome to the Phantom Force. Jonah Pierce was no longer an escape artist. He was the government's most valuable ghost, and his mission was just beginning.